Hello, I'm so happy to introduce you to a new idea that I've been waiting to do, and that is a spotlight on certain authors' books. This one is Freida McFadden's. Please check the timestamps. I'm going to put in what it is I love about her books. I read all of them besides two. Okay, not bad. And then I'm also going to include my thoughts about the movie that has just come out and then talk about some of the movies that are being adapted and by whom. So do check those timestamps, and I can't wait to share this journey with you. Again, I want to do a shout out to Read Books in Order, which is what I used. This is my list right here to do my, very thorough reading and take notes on the Freida McFadden books. And I'll include it in the description so that you can use that. I am not being endorsed by any companies right now, including them. I'm just trying to help my readers to find great resources like I enjoy. Okay, I am a Hitchcock fan, don't know if you are, but something that I enjoy about Freida McFadden books is kind of her Hitchcockian balance. So she has a very thriller moment balanced with a calmer one or with humor chapter to chapter. She also gives us this kind of omniscient understanding of what's going on, not by telling us precisely, but she mostly has her first character narrative, and she just gives us multiple first character narratives. Sometimes those are going to be going in different time frames, and it's something that you should be aware of when you're reading her books so that you can keep on top of it, because there's a lot of clues if that's the type of reading that you do with mysteries, looking for clues to solve her books. I love how most of her main characters are introduced. In other books, that would mean they're your protagonist. Not necessarily in hers, because she has a whole bunch of unreliable narrators in her books. I love how she uses some, again, I feel like this is kind of a directorial technique where she focuses on an object and that carries through as a theme in her stories. She has used hurdles, and sometimes it's because it's maybe a murder weapon. Maybe it's because this person's fixated on it. And what type of person is fixated on turtles? Or she uses a papasan chair, and is the papasan chair present in all of the scenes in the future and the past? That can help you have like a clue or a lead. By the way, love papasan chairs. Also scrunchies. I love scrunchies. I know they were 1980s, or 90s, but they come into play with her book, The Boyfriend. She also frequently has her characters own cats, which makes sense because Frida herself owns a cat. In fact, she even gives credit. She dedicates one of her short stories to her cat. I also love the morality that most of her protagonists have. They seem to be anti-smoking, anti-drugs. They definitely don't get into alcohol that much. So that is really nice. I also love, love, love that her books are clean. That's something that there's just so many popular books right now. And as you're reading them and enjoying them, boom, there's this big sex scene, and it can make some people uncomfortable. I'm one of those people. I don't know if this is true of her. I've not seen this in any interviews, but I do know that she will use some type of medical interesting tidbit, and it feels like she works it into stories. Like when people faint from the sight or hearing about blood, even that condition. There are other conditions that she has talked about in her books. I had gone through a whole bunch of training in film school, and I enjoyed learning about a technique that I would then go and use in one of my films. And I feel like that's kind of something that she always keeps in the back of her mind or takes notes, that there's some interesting condition, and she just is looking for an opportunity to share that with the readers in one of her books. Cool thing that I did learn from her interviews is that she designed all the covers until The Coworker. That was the first one that she didn't. The Coworker came out in 2023, so all her covers before that were done and created by her. I think that's really cool. Freida McFadden is likely in her 40s. She definitely spent her childhood in New York and had spent 5 years on the West Coast. She did say that she watched the movie You. Maybe she read the book as well. I actually have that back there, and love that. I could see some of that fixation of her characters from that were equal to the book You. Freida McFadden has a Facebook group with about 280,000 members that are called the McFans. I think also cool. There's the last two reasons why I just love her books. One, they are so entertaining to me that I can exercise and not notice that I'm exercising. Or I don't want to stop exercising because I want to finish hearing her book when I do her audiobooks. The second is I love her humor. Oh my goodness. I definitely would be friends with this woman in real life because we definitely share the same humor and I get probably the majority of her references. And I will share some of that when I do my descriptions of the books. Okay, her first book came out in 2013 and it was The Devil Wears Scrubs. It is the first of the Dr. Jane McGill books. It was not a mystery as she started writing mysteries. There might be some mystery elements in it. It is one of the only books that I did not read of hers. What I have seen in it is that it is talking about when Jane McGill began her internship at County Hospital, and it talks about the difficulties working in that medical industry. And the devil is the professional rival and her very intimidating senior resident. That is her second book. Heather McKinley is a first-year medical student at a prestigious school that is infamous for its high suicide rate. It seemed like the mystery elements of it were really super compacted. It mostly was giving you the insight of what it's like to go to a school and all of the drudgery and the grueling work and the again, rivalries that are faced by medical students trying to get ahead. It was talking about different medical drugs and how people might take them and the effects that they have on people. And there were people who were very likable in this story that were connected to Heather. There's a little bit of unreliable narration in that we believe certain people are good guys, and it may not be so clean cut as you find out the longer you get into the book and hear more about their story. 3, Baby City. I enjoyed that because I am a mother and I felt like what she gave the reader was this fabulous perspective about the stresses and parental anxieties and the types of interesting patients that people in the medical field need to deal with. And I have a fair amount of medical people in my life. It sounded very believable. Obviously, she had to do her own internship through that that area as well. I don't know if that is her actual discipline because it's been talked about that Freida McFadden is a brain surgeon, which has thoroughly been debunked. It could be that she was an obstetrician. I don't know. But do not expect a mystery in it. It is 100% an excellent character and insight story. And like I said, as a mother, I really could appreciate all of the emotional beats that the characters would go through and all the irritating ones as well, because I've also worked in service industries and I can understand the frustrations. Hey, Brain Damage is book number 4. And in this one, there's a successful dermatologist, and she is Dr. Charlotte McKenna. She is having a great life, though she has a couple weird stalkery-ish people in her life, and one of those being a person who is a former patient, and another who is a wannabe. And she makes a choice to get involved with one, and very soon after, she has a horrible gunshot wound. That's all I'm going to say. The gunshot wound is the brain damage that they're talking about in the title. It is her story about how she is recovering from being unable to speak or move. She has the condition where her brain does not understand that she has a left side. I believe it was the left side. And all the different ways that they need patience, the ways that they need to be creative in order to help take care of people. So that was one aspect I enjoyed about this book. Another one were the people that were patients that were healing with her from their own different situations. And then in between hearing about that recovery, you get little bits and fragments of her memories coming back, and it tells the tale of what led to her brain injury, and that's the mystery. Who was the one that actually caused it, and what were the circumstances? Because she has a couple false starts, I'll just say. So, love this one. This is the one that starts feeling what I would call the most Freida McFadden style of mystery book. And I did enjoy its endings. Some of her endings are not happy. The Devil You Know, book number 5, is the second book of the Dr. Jane McGill series. I did listen to this one a bit ago, so I'm not as tight on remembering it. She is a physician in the VA hospital, and she is a mother, and she has a husband. To my memory, it sounds as though she had a very wonderful time with a former lover who did not commit and give her the family that she had wanted. And that former lover comes back into her life and this hospital setting, and she is sorely tempted. And her current family life, she adores her child, but it sounds like things have gone stale with her marriage. And it isn't a mystery, but it is, I felt like a very believable situation that modern day career women face. And yeah, that's all I'll just say. Book number 6 is The Perfect Son. This one I felt had some references to The Bad Seed, which was a movie I saw many years ago, thought it was fabulous. I don't know if there's a book, The Bad Seed, but I saw the movie. And it's about Liam and his mother, Erica, and she is married to Jason, and they have a daughter as well. Liam is a perfect son in that he is always attired in a certain way. He has even perfect teeth. It seems like teeth is a thing. When you have like really white, perfectly, aligned teeth in her books, that person's going to be a bad guy. So I don't know if this is meant to be a red herring, just a little, hey, pay attention to this guy because of his teeth or what. But Liam is referred to as smarmy by his peers. He is always complimentary, and he behaves in a very proper way. As the story unrolls, you find out that Mom, Erica, is very worried about her son because of some things that he did in his past. And she's always like hyper vigilant about trying to protect any of the girls that he winds up getting crushes on. As time goes on, I'll give you a teeny bit of a spoiler because it refers back to that bad seed. Mom reveals that her dad was a jailbird. He committed some crimes, and she is afraid that her son, Liam, may get those bad genes from her dad. And you start hearing more about the girls in this town, how there are people who are going missing, and there's all this stuff about Liam getting crushes on certain people, and it's just really good Freida McFadden storytelling. If I were to recommend a person start on a book besides The Housemaid, I would say have it be this one. There's one more thing I want to add. Do not put your child into a closet, not into an attic, not into a closet. Just don't do that. Because, boy, it seems to traumatize kids and turn them into really evil humans. So just that does come into play in this book. And I won't say which character this happened to. Book number 7 is The X. And it's a book that I feel is very strongly referencing the book Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Yeah, something like that. Which again is a black and white movie, which also is a book for sure. I've read both and seen the movie. Anyway, this is about Cassie, who finally meets this super perfect doctor, I believe. Is he a doctor? Yep. And he is seemingly so infatuated with her, but there's this other woman who he had a relationship with, who seems to be the perfect woman, Francesca. And Cassie, I was really rooting for her because she's a sweet girl that you want to see have a happy life and to have all those things that she imagined she had be real, not all made up. And it's also really difficult to think that you are coming in second or whatever to a person who had a first true love, that no one will ever compare to. Number 8 is The Surrogate Mother. We're about a quarter of the way there. And in this book, Abby, she was an executive for a marketing group, and she is desperate to have children. She finds a person who is working with her not her secretary, but her assistant, who is Monica. And Monica seems to be willing to take her eggs, Abby's eggs, and to be a surrogate for her, which is like the most brilliant, wonderful thing ever for Abby. Abby then starts having reasons to be doubtful of the pure intentions and the goodness of Monica when her life starts to be really frazzled and falling apart, although she's not the one who's carrying a baby having all those hormones. So it is a great mystery, and I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of, girl drama, and the guy of the story is kind of like almost a sub character. He's barely important compared to how important the girl relationships are. Book 9, The Wife Upstairs. This is a book that I read at the same time I read a book it was frequently compared to called Verity, and that is by Colleen Hoover. I hadn't read Colleen Hoover's books because I was under the impression that they were really, really spicy, and it did have spicy scenes, but it wasn't as bad as I thought. All right, just getting that out there. This one and that one had a very wealthy household, a husband who is the caretaker of a wife who is crippled in some way. And the main character is someone who, in the book The Wife Upstairs, she's kind of down and out. Sylvia is willing to accept this caregiver role for that wife in The Wife Upstairs, and that's just because she has an opportunity to get a job that just doesn't work out, so she is miserable and she just takes this job. She is definitely attracted to the husband. In both cases, they are very attractive husbands. In The Wife Upstairs, the wife, Victoria, is paralyzed, and Adam, her husband, is the one who is always taking care of her, with her feeding and her changing and everything. And in that story, Sylvia winds up taking over for some of those duties, but mostly she's being hired to be a companion for the wife. And she is only beginning to be suspicious that things are not as they start out being when she discovers, and this is where I might mix up the two books, I believe she discovers a book and she discovers files, I believe, or some she discovers something, sorry, in her bedroom that was hidden or something. Anyways, when she discovers this something, she is learning about how the main character, Victoria, met Adam. And as she's reading these things about their relationship, she's starting to get a certain opinion about Adam. And then she winds up doing things that cause a crescendo of thriller horror stuff by the end of the book, based on what she is learning in this journal or something that she found. There's a difference between the audiobook and the book that I am extra confused with. So I'm sorry that my memory is being so faulty. And I just very recently read the Verity story. So in the Verity story, it's a case of this woman who is a fantastic writer, and her husband is this kind of housewife. I know he has a real estate business or something as well, but he is taking care of their child and her, and he needs somebody to help him with finishing the books. And when he meets the main character in that story, she feels like, oh my gosh, I know this woman's writing and what big boots to fill. And when she goes to his house and live in, just like in the other story, she discovers the autobiography of this famous writer, the wife, who is now incapacitated. And she is not the caretaker for her. There's a nurse that takes care of her. Now, there's, in both of the stories, our main character who is living in the house does become infatuated with the husband. And what I've heard is that the author was referring to Jane Eyre, where there's a wife that's alive in the house, and Mr. Rochester falls in love with this person that is living in the house, that is this underling, and the underling falls in love with Mr. Rochester. A lot of people are saying that Freida McFadden plagiarized. I would argue that just like in the movie Groundhog Day, there's this trope of repeating the day, repeating the day, repeating the day. If an author writes a book where the main character has to repeat the day till they get it right, people don't say that they're plagiarizing Groundhog Day. It's a trope. I feel like having the wife upstairs, or gaslighting. We don't say, oh no, anyone who has the main character's gaslighting is plagiarizing the movie Gaslight. We just recognize that it is a similar trope in the story. It's just kind of like maybe a backbone, or not even a backbone. It's less than that. But it isn't plagiarizing, is my argument. So this is a book that definitely had lots of, as you heard, similar characteristics to a different book. In a lot of people's arguments, there's another one like that, and that's The Last Mrs. Parrish and the Housemaid. But I'll get to that in a little while. Okay, before we get to book number 10, which is One by One, I had a break for dinner, and we met with my sister-in-law and did Christmas presents. And what did she give me? Two Freida McFadden books, which she had no idea I was reading, not doing the show, nothing. So, she literally asked the bookstore person, what do you think I should get my sister-in-law? And she gave me two books I didn't own already, which is also a miracle. I did read a lot of books through either borrowing them from a library, or I had them as audiobooks, or I had them as audiobooks or Kindle books that I had purchased. So, don't have the physical copy. I love having the physical copy. All right, that's a little segue into One by One. And One by One kind of reminded me of a book by Holly Jackson that I recently read, Five Survive, where these people are going on a big trip. They're traveling together. They all have different secrets that become revealed as time goes on. In the book One by One, they're going to a destination, they break down, they get lost in the woods, whereas the Five Survive, they're stuck in this vehicle and somebody's trying to get them to reveal their stuff. And in this one, it's more a case of you have our main character telling her story and taking turns with a chapter by an anonymous narrator. And you get more of like a back history from that anonymous person. And there's, in this group of friends that are traveling together, there's infidelity, there's definite jealousy, there's just a lot of sneaky ways to get rid of people who you really aren't friends with. And it's a lot of just like kind of gross behavior in general. I was not a great fan of this, but it still had me going, oh, by the end of the story. And I did want to definitely know who my anonymous narrator was. Okay, that's it for One by One. Book 11, Want to Know a Secret? I really could get into this mystery by Freida because of the YouTube aspect. And I understood the main character, April, how she wanted to be liked. I understood how she portrayed herself was really important to her. I'm not like that in many ways, but I could understand some aspects of her character. And then there's a lot more to her, and you discover other sides of April, not the view that she wants everyone to think of her, which is told through her narrative by the other characters, including the new folk that come into town, her best friend Julie's opinion, and everything is really dramatic, and there's a lot of paranoia in it, and it had a lot of drama that you see with really tight housewifey comparisons with children, and one-upmanship and keeping tabs on husbands, and it was a lot of that along with a great mystery. And I thought that had a very surprising ending, so I think that it will be one of the ones that I would highly recommend to any new Freida McFadden readers. Locked Door is book number 12, and at first I thought that this book was going to be some sort of take on the Bluebeard story, where Bluebeard would go away and know that his wife was being unfaithful or disappointing him by going into a locked room that she wasn't supposed to go into, and then there was blood on the door and she couldn't wash it off. Nothing to do with it whatsoever. But what really happened in the book is that Nora is a very successful surgeon. She loves it. She has a business partner, Philip, and he's not so much a dedicated person. She is sadly the daughter of a serial killer who is in jail. He had a certain type of woman that he liked, and he had a certain disgusting feature. And somehow there's now a copycat killer using her father's technique and type. So people are starting to suspect that maybe she had something to do with it, figuring out her identity. She took on a new name after she went to live with her grandmother, and she is starting to doubt herself after the investigations because she's having moments where she's having blacked out, and she's seeing blood and she doesn't know if it's real, and all these things are happening to her. Meanwhile, there's some great people in her life, including a boyfriend from long ago who has re-entered it, and he seems like a super guy. He does have a locked door, and there are some things in maybe their past that would make you be suspicious of him, but he's so likable you want to believe he's not the killer. There's a lot of different characters that are mentioned in the story, and it's really difficult to figure out who it really was. That was a great surprise and a great twist that Freida McFadden used. I would even say that the very, very end of the book was kind of her lead in to the character Millie for the Housemaid. Book 13, Do Not Disturb, 1,000% influenced by the movie Psycho that Hitchcock wrote and directed. Things were true in real life that Hitchcock based it on, so it's kind of like one step away, the cousin of that. And in this one, the woman who is fleeing, her name is Quinn, and she is stuck in a snowstorm that brings her to a motel. That motel is the Baxter, not the Bates motel. And she learns from somebody who's staying there long term that there's been a murder in her room. She was fleeing because of a crime that she commits that she does not want to stick around for the repercussions. I won't say what that is. Whereas in Psycho, it was she stole money, embezzled money. And then there's this helpful Bates Baxter motel owner, and he talks about his wife who's an invalid or somehow can't leave her house and all these other things. So it's wonderful reading this book and making the comparisons. She obviously made them so in your face that you would make the comparisons. That's part of the fun of the book, and try to figure out the mystery, whether, our bad guy is going to wind up being a psychotic person with mommy issues, or is it some other type of thing? So definitely fun book to read. You'll enjoy. Book number 14. We're finally at The Housemaid. And this one is, of course, the most famous. It's the one that has been turned into a movie, which if you look at my timestamp, you'll see when I review that. It was a book that so many people who didn't like it compared it to The Last Mrs. Parrish that I went and read that. There were a couple other ones that people were saying, oh, it's a ripoff. Again, I feel like when I was making the comments about the wife upstairs, I feel like she may have used some tropes that have been used in other books, but it was wholly her own story. And it was even more fun for me to read the two and compare them. Yes, in both of these stories, The Housemaid and The Last Mrs. Parrish, there is a wife who is, let's say, I don't want to be too spoilery, so they have a program in mind, and there's the main character who is the underling, I guess. With The Housemaid, it was Millie. She is going to get a job working for Nina Winchester and her husband Andrew, and she is desperate for a job because she has been in jail for the past 10 years. That comes out right at the beginning, and she is afraid that this swanky place that would give room and board as well will never become something for her, and yet it does. It makes a reader question, why would this very wealthy woman Nina take on a person like Millie with her background? And then with The Last Mrs. Parrish, there's the underling person is purposely trying to become the next Mrs. Parrish. Daphne is completely fooled by Amber, who's this really ambitious young woman, the underling, who wants to be in her shoes and just get her, seduce the husband and get rid of her and live her super wealthy, wonderful Mrs. Parrish life. And she wants to be that last Mrs. Parrish. They're two different stories. I feel like what happens in The Last Mrs. Parrish was so fair. Also, I feel like what happens with, Millie, I thought that was a good ending for her too. Definitely look at the movie comparison, because I will have spoilers in that. 15, Do You Remember? Reminded me of the book by S.J. Watson that I read a long time ago. Both the main characters, Tess and Do You Remember, and then the main character in that other book, have the type of memory issues that when they go to sleep, literally their entire memory is rewritten for the next day. So she remembers everything from 10 years and prior ago, including that Tess had a fiance, Harry, and now when she wakes up each day, finds that she's living with a stranger who is her husband, and she has a letter from herself that says, this is your husband, etc. And she just has a really difficult time feeling connected to him. And she keeps wondering whatever happened to Harry. She has no answers from her dad when she tries to connect with him. She has a best friend, Lucy, who's still in her life. But there's she's like the ultimate unreliable narrator, even to herself. She doesn't know whom she can trust, and she just doesn't feel that connection with her husband. And it's very creepy, and the reader can't help but feel an empathy for her. What a horrible situation to be in. So when she gets a text message saying, "Don't trust your husband," it puts her into a tailspin of, how can she investigate this and then remember what she investigated the next day. So it's really fabulous. The characters, I thought that they were, it was a really fun book in trying to figure out who is trustworthy and what their motivations were and stuff like that. You should definitely give it a read. All right, book 16, The Inmate. This is a story where Brooke is going back to her home that she escaped from when she was a teenager because of a murdered classmate friend. And she came back though because the house was free and she needed a place to raise her son. And she takes a job at the same penitentiary that her ex is at, and she put him there. She thought her ex Shane had been the murderer from the classmate, situation back when they were teenagers. It's kind of strange. It makes you wonder if this is another story similar to the book The Silent Patient by Michael Idalides. And you wonder, is she purposely going in there so she can stir up mischief and cause more harm to this man? But in reality, it seems like he's kind of sweet, and there's opportunities that she has when dealing with him that make the reader wind up thinking that, perhaps the wrong guy got put in jail. Coincidentally, there's another friend of theirs, Tim, who starts dating Brooke. Sorry, I forgot her name for a sec. There are some situations that make her suspicious of him. And meanwhile, she's just trying to do the best she can raising her son. And it's hard. She gets a babysitter to help. And there's just so much crazy twists and turns in this book that it's like, wow. And then, what? No, wow, wow. And then literally the person I would least suspect in the whole story winds up being a murderer. So we can't talk more about it without disclosing too much, but it's another one of her books that I absolutely adored. 17 Never Lie. I had been listening to this one for sure as an audiobook. I was doing lots of long walks and it was awesome. It was riveting. It's the story about this couple that find the most perfect house that I think they wound up buying. And they wound up being in that house kind of trapped because of a storm. And the wife is listening to these audio tapes of sessions of this really famous psychiatrist. And it seems like she is connected to at least some of these patients, or there's just something strange going on as she's listening to them. And then there's this mistrust of her husband and what he's doing, and there's lots of weird stuff happening in this book. It felt more of a horror thriller than other books of hers to me. So if that is the type of thing you like, then I think this is the book for you. Okay, for book 18, which is a super short story, The Gift, you really should know the story, The Gift of the Magi, by O. Henry. And I did. So as soon as I heard that Stella is looking for a very meaningful gift for her husband, Justin, the two of them are super poor. She goes to get her hair cut off. It is just like the original O. Henry story. But in this situation, she is making a deal with a pawn shop person, and that is for a, um, a, a chain for a watch that Justin really loves. And then what he gives her is not the same as in the story or Henry. In that book, both partners are so poor, they give what they most treasure to each other. They sacrifice for each other because of such deep love. But what Freida does is quite the twist. Yes, she, Stella, gives something that's most precious to her out of love for her husband. However, something very odd and unexpected happens in her ending instead. Book 19 is The Housemaid's Secret, which is the Housemaid book 2, bringing back Millie and Enzo. Yay, love them. This story is where she is in a home where there appears to be another abused woman and also super wealthy. And she gets caught into their machinations, the husband and wife, and possibly adultery and stuff like that. And it's got some good twists again. It will be brought up in the movie review section, some aspects about this too. 4D is book number 20. Amy is doing her psychiatric overnight shift she has to do as a medical student, and she really doesn't want to do this. Then she discovers that her boyfriend, that she wants to be her ex, purposely did some shift maneuvering so that he could be on the shift with her. She is miserable about this. On top of that, there's her friend Jade, who is in the institution, and she and Amy were super tight until Amy started having hallucinations and strange things that happen as a child, and Jade goes down really dark paths, and the two of their friendship just becomes really warped until they're at this point where Jade is in an institution and Amy is a nurse, or she's a student, medical student. Okay. And then there are patients that are super dangerous that she shouldn't go near. And it's very creepy because I believe their power went out and couldn't get a hold of anybody. And it's just, there was no Wi Fi for their wireless phones. She gets you believing one thing and sorry, you were wrong. She does a great job with her red herrings. And this one is no exception. Loved it, loved the ending. You will too. One is the Coworker. Natalie is the superstar saleswoman whom everybody is a little jealous of because she's so perfect and beautiful and everything goes so well for her. The boss seems to just treat her like she's the teacher's pet. And a new person comes to work for the company, an accountant. And this accountant appears to have some autistic tendencies. She is really good at keeping the books and she's really good at her job, but she is fixated on things like turtles. And she's an easy target for people who feel like they can one up themselves by putting down others. Apparently, Natalie does that, though she presents herself as being the best friend of Dawn. She's the only one who seems concerned when Dawn doesn't show up for work because she is so methodically on time and stuff. The whole time you're guessing the point of view, and you wind up knowing through different chapters and journaling and communication with a friend of Dawn's that is not the same at all as what Dawn perceives. There's great humor throughout it. Natalie, I think, said something like, are the detectives coming to her house looking for a bloody glove or a leg sticking out of a wood chipper, referring to two super famous murders. It ends in a very satisfying way, and it was a ride, and you will be pulled through these pages and these chapters because it's really thrilling, and you definitely feel the need to know who really did what and whose perspective was the honest one. 22 is The Housemaid is Watching, which is the first book in 2024, and I believe it was in 2024 that Freida McFadden stopped working in the medical field and became a full-time writer. I might be wrong, it might be in 2025, but somewhere within these 2 years that happened. And she writes, let's see, 5 books in this time frame. in 2024. Anyway, this is our third book with Millie and Enzo. They are married, yay, and they want to have their own house and their own, neighborhood and just like start a new life and with their kids and just everything should be good. Their children have issues with other children in the neighborhood, and there's a lot of ugly behavior, and it feels like people. I don't know how much of it is Millie being paranoid, or there are people who are like setting up to watch her, quasi like, geez, the FBI following me, or have plants, that type of paranoia. And it's no matter what, you want Millie and Enzo to get what they deserve because they have been, though not morally good people, they always have good intentions if you want justice to be served, shall we say. Justice is served by the end of this book, and it was very well deserved justice. And I love the mama bear of Millie in this story. You will too. Book 23 was one of the first books that I read by her, and that is The Teacher. And it is a book that I listened to, also read as a paperback book. It's a story about main character Eve Bennett. She is a teacher with her husband at school. Her husband is hot. Every girl thinks he is hot. She is insanely jealous about him, but at the same time, she's having an affair. So, like, what? But her jealousy is something that promotes her looking into certain students, on top of the fact that she is good friends with and is fond of one of these teachers who is in trouble because of a certain student. And as she digs into this student Addie's situation, you get to know that these teachers and their relationships with students are far from what they should be. It was one of those stories, though, that I was listening to while exercising, and I just could have kept exercising until the end of the book. It was that good. The next book was a novella, possibly my favorite of all her books. I died through the whole thing, died out loud laughing. And my husband was always like, what the heck? I kept telling him all these things, reading them out loud. I will read a few out loud to you too. And that book, I got to get the name right. The Widow's Husband's Secret Lie. Yes, even that is a lot to unpack. The prologue of that is an excellent example. She says, no one will read the prologue. So right then and there, I'm like, haha, okay. Next, I believe she dedicated this one to her cat. She self-referenced in the book having her character read a book, and the boyfriend would ask if anyone's ever heard of author Freida McFadden. She had references to not burying a certain person in a pet cemetery to bring them back. I thought that was so funny. She used all these little quickie references to Hitchcock. The decisive point of their marriage was over the dress, the one that went viral, whether it was white and gold or was it blue and black. So, I mean, that there, I'm like, oh my gosh, she just killed me. One of the paragraphs that I just had to read out loud was she had a manservant named Willie, and he's always offering her tea, which from the very beginning of the book, she says she hates tea, but she's constantly drinking it, and she's constantly being offered it and offering it to other people. But he says, I hope you like it, Mrs. Lockwood. And she says that I meet Willie's eyes across the dining room table. Willie is in his late 20s, this is her maid, with a shock of jet black hair. And there's something incredibly alluring about him. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Maybe it's his dark, dark eyes and his broad, muscular shoulders. Maybe it's the fact that he's always cleaning our house with his shirt off. And then it's hard to put my finger on it, but Grant, that's her husband, never entirely trusted him. Like, oh my gosh, she kills me. She's so funny. Okay. So, yeah, if you're just looking for a super awesome spoof with lots of twists and all these little circular references and just like great tropes, it was great. You really should read it. I only have a library copy, but I will be definitely buying this book right here. Yep. To keep in my own home library. Okay, book number 25, The Boyfriend. It is poor Sydney is trying to meet a good boyfriend, whole bunch of losers, so many cringy dates with some Kevin guy, and situations, and a guy comes to her rescue and they start dating, and oh, he is wonderful. He's a doctor, he's everything that she never knew she wanted, and he is romantic, and it's wonderful. You are led to believe that there's a very evil something that comes along with this good doctor, and maybe it's so. Maybe there's more to the cringy Kevin. And perhaps there's someone in the background who wears scrunchies, and there definitely felt a lot of influence from the movie series of You that was, I think, the second season with a character named Love. If you enjoyed that, then, Joe's love interest was Love. Then you will really get into this book. Book 26 was another novella, a short story, The Housemaid's Wedding. And it was one I distinctly remember I was gardening while I was listening to this one. And it had, it's kind of before book 3, and that this is where Millie and Enzo are about to be married. She is pregnant, and Enzo is just like super awesome taking care of her. She's real nervous about her parents because she hasn't been on talking terms with them forever. And they're meeting, and there's this mysterious person at the door. She's just super paranoid, and everything's been going so well for her. She's just expecting something awful to happen. And that's just her nerves that a normal bride would have. And then because of the life and the way that they've been making their income and the fact that she is pregnant, all of that is on top of it. So this one is enjoyable because we love the characters. You still want to know what's going to happen next, but it isn't one of the super twisty ones that, her full-length novels are. Very enjoyable, though. You will want to read it. Book 27, The Crash, I would definitely put this in my top 10 of my favorite books. It's about Tegan, who is having a baby that she didn't necessarily want to have. It could be a date drug that was slipped to her by some super rich person. That super rich person wants to buy her off when she won't get an abortion, and she is going to see her brother, who is this wonderful person who loves her very much, and just trying to, finish her pregnancy there. And when she goes, she has an accident. She is being taken care of by a local person who's this hulking, huge, scary man, and his wife winds up being a nurse who just isn't working right now. They have a really unusual marriage, and the main character, Tegan, she's someone who the nurse who's taking care of her, it's between the two of them, the story. It seems as to the nurse that she doesn't appreciate having this baby, and Tegan's point of view is not that. And then they both start having doubts about each other and what's right for the baby and what's right for safety. And throughout it all, Tegan is clearly being kept in this home. She is not, similar to the book Misery, she is not being allowed to leave once everything's cleared up after the accident. They keep coming up with excuses. There's just a lot of that back and forth. Meanwhile, there's a child that is a neighbor who comes into play, that the nurse has a really nice relationship taking care of her because it seems like she's being neglected. And it's just wonderful how that subplot gets wound up with the whole story, and you discover who had the correct perspective, who had the honest viewpoint about how things were by the end of the story, and it was really satisfying. The Tenant, it's amazing. It does feel like several movies I've seen in the past. I can't remember the names of them, but there's a lot of gaslighting and a lot of manipulating. And I'm not going to say who's doing it, but I will say that there's a really frustrated co-owner of a apartment that's too expensive for, let's see, for Blake to maintain because he loses his job, and his wife, he wants to keep this to keep her happy. He can't get himself another job. Really unusual circumstances how he lost his job. He's very suspicious, and there's a lot of coming from this man's point of view, unlike most of our stories, which is a woman's point of view. There's a lot of masculine pressure and, provider, and he is driven crazy by the person they wind up having live in the apartments with them. You just can't get rid of the person who's living in the apartment, and I feel so bad for landlords when this happens in real life. But it was great. It was, when you find out what was really going on, you're like, oh. Number 30 is The Intruder. And our main character is a woman living in a cabin. She's having a wonderful, quiet life. She must be attractive because everyone's always hitting on her, including the owner of her cabin and a nearby neighbor who she's considering maybe dating. But anyways, there's this huge storm coming, and it's the storm of the century. And everyone's all like, oh, maybe you should stay in a hotel because there's a tree that might fall on your property, and things aren't great for dependable electricity out here, and the roads far away, and all this stuff. So you get that claustrophobic feeling, and then the main character sees somebody is out in her shed, and it turns out to be a girl. And then you have these two alternating chapters talking from somebody's childhood. Is it the child's point of view? There's violence and there's abuse, and it just becomes a case of wondering who's safe and who's protecting whom. And the men of the story have very strong roles that you find out in history. There's a lot more to their background and their connections, and it was a very, very good book. Dear Debbie is book number 31, which will be coming out on my birthday. Yay, can't wait. That'll be a birthday present to me. It is based on the advice column, Dear Debbie, and it is a story that she is really fabulous and been a confident advisor for years. And when her life starts to crumble and she sees things happening with tracker apps and stuff, her teenage daughter's life is going downhill, which might coincidentally be the same age as Freida McFadden's daughter. I don't know if she has more than one. Then, it's supposed to be her taking her own advice and pursuing solutions. So I don't know if she's going to be a Millie-like character, or it's going to be some other way that she does things, but I just can't wait for that book. We were at the Housemaid movie. I saw this with a different sister-in-law. We loved it. We both, of course, read the book, myself a couple times up front, and she had just read it within days of seeing the movie, so it was nice and fresh in her mind. We could do a lot of comparisons between the two. Right off the bat, fantastic casting, setting. They picked an excellent house, and all their scenes were really uber perfect for the story. The acting I thought was tremendous from everybody. I know some people were saying Cindy Sweeney was bland until the last third, but I thought she did a fantastic job of portraying it. I actually, before, when she's just driving up at the very beginning to the mansion and she doesn't have her glasses on, I was like, ooh, they didn't put her glasses on. And then she pulls them out and puts them on. I was looking for stuff. And the screenplay writing was awesome. Actually listened to a podcast about the person who did the screenplay, and that was fascinating. I thought that some of the changes from the book in the movie were superior to the way things were portrayed in the book. So there will be spoilers here. If you didn't read the whole book, The Housemaid, and or you didn't see the movie, then please stop listening and fast forward to the next section. Look at my timestamps. I will be talking about which one of her books are being adapted into series and stuff later. I thought that they did a great job having Nina say that she was expecting a baby and that's why she needed a maid so quickly and badly. I thought that gave some urgency, and it explained some of her really bizarre behavior in the very beginning when Millie does wind up getting hired to be her maid. I liked how you didn't know what it was that Millie did that got her in jail. You just knew that she had to see a parole officer and she had to have a job, that she wasn't in her last job because of defending somebody. But you don't know that. It's revealed as time goes. I thought that adding the mother was an improvement because it gave more reasons why characters would go along with the mistreatment. And it was a really good add-on saying that Millie stole the car to get the police to come and arrest versus, oh, she stole food or we think she shoplifted some food. That just didn't seem as impressive. But, framing her that she stole a car was, I thought, an improvement. I definitely would have liked to see Nina getting fatter because, my goodness, she's the actress that portrayed her as just gorgeous, and she stayed gorgeous other than having her makeup a little messy and her hair. Her roots didn't even get is long. I mean, they should have showed more roots, I think. But I also would have enjoyed more of Enzo in the story. He was just a few scenes where you saw his gorgeousness, and you didn't get that there was any type of relationship between him and Nina in order to get Nina safely out of the house. I did like, however, that it was Nina's daughter, Cecilia, who was the moral person who said, Mom, we can't leave Millie there. She doesn't deserve what she's getting. I did like the way Millie punishes Andrew, not with a whole stack of books being encyclopedias or something on him. I mean, that was interesting. I looked up if that actually could do the things that happened in the book. But I thought it was better with the teeth thing. It was a little weird with the mother commenting on the teeth, but you could tell that if you didn't get the idea that all this crazy behavior, controlling and crazy behavior that Andrew had came from being weirdly abused by his mom, then you sure should have gotten it from at least that scene in the movie. But I am just thrilled to know that they already have greenlit the sequel. I don't know if it's going to be made by Paul Feig, something like that, and have the same actors in it. If so, boy, that would be great to have Sydney Sweeney play Millie some more and Enzo's character. I don't know the actor's name, but that would be great. I'd love that. Point in January of 2026, we already know that The Tenant is going to be an Amazon movie or Amazon series, don't know which. I know that The Teacher is going to be an Apple TV, and The Surrogate is going to be presented by Sony Pictures. And then already in development, so probably the next ones we're going to see will be The Never Lie by Netflix, and also in development by Amazon will be the Dear Debbie series. So I don't know if they're using the book as like the basis, like it'll be this character and her solving problems throughout. I don't know how they'll do that. But boy, we have a lot to look forward to. There are a lot of people who, in everything that I've seen for reviews and commentary, that are complainers and negative about Freida McFadden. However, I have only found joy in reading her books, and they have been page turners and thrillers, and I want to talk about them, and that's what compelled me to read. I have not been disappointed. I hope that other people will listen to this podcast or watch the video and feel motivated to also read her books. And please, please, please comment about your feelings about Freida McFadden's books in my comments below. I will promise to get back to you. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a great day. Keep reading and take care.